discovering, developed his or her gifts and strengths and know how to use them for your purpose. There's a hole in each of our souls where we yearn and we long for something. And again, it's not a thing that we long for. It's a person. What we long for is the living, breathing God. That cannot be filled with idols. Men in your middle ages, it's not going to be filled with fancy cars or new women. Women, it's not going to be filled with new relationships or talking with new friends. It's not going to be filled with any of those things. That hole can only be filled by God, God's self. And God knows that. So what does God do? God comes down. When I teach the new member class about what is a Lutheran, the first thing that I draw on the board, those of you that have been to my class can attest to this, is a big downward arrow. I said, if you get this, you've got everything you need to know. God always comes down. That's why we celebrate. You can never work your way up to God. God comes down to you. God comes to us, and that is a reason that we can celebrate. We don't have to work our way up to God. God is coming to us. You see, God establishes that relationship with us. He nourishes it, and it continues. And God gives us himself in a meal. We celebrate this meal on a weekly basis, not because it's a good idea or because some people want it, but because God said, do this, and I am with you. We believe that's what heaven is going to be like, a gigantic family reunion and a big meal where God is the servant and he's giving us everything that we need. And it's not just something that happens when we die. It's something that is breaking in today, where Jesus is giving himself to us because he loves us so much. And not so that we can just receive it and say, God, you're awesome. You keep giving, I'll keep receiving. Deal. No, it's not that way. The point of it is God sacrifices God's self and we receive so that we can sacrifice ourselves for the world, knowing that this is not the end of the story. No matter what the worst thing is that you could think of that could happen in this life, death, that's not the end. That's not the end of the story. So you don't have to live in fear anymore because God is with you. God is calling other people into this meal of love. I think about last week, our council invited Professor Shinji Nakashima, who was our guest speaker at our Saturday service from the Japanese Evangelical Lutheran Church, to come out to dinner to Pomodoros. The congregation was the very first congregation, the very first group of people to ever share Holy Communion with Professor Nakashima and his son in the United States. The very first group he got to speak to in the United States was this congregation, a flight to come to a bunch of people he's never met before in his life and tell his life story and how he survived this terrible tsunami. Wow, what a testimony. We got to share in the living bread of heaven right here with Professor Nagashima. And later on that night, I said, we had the living bread from heaven, and I brought him some manna later on that night. Krispy Kreme. And they are delicious. And I brought him some milk to go with it, because that's just a delicacy around here. For those of you who are visiting, it's right next door. Try it while you're here. I doubt it. God is present and God is faithful. That's why we believe that Christ is present in this meal. I'm not going to be a fool up here and explain the physics because I can't. I receive it in faith, and I take it that God said, I'll be with you. Eat my flesh and blood. And as you're consuming God, you have life. And He comes to give you a true life, one that's animated and full and rich and marked by self-giving and love and purpose beyond just existing and saying, oh, I hope nothing bad happens today. Knowing that the bad is going to happen and still choosing to trust and go forward and move on. You see, heaven is coming down today. It's not something that we believe is just going to happen in the future. Jesus is breaking in today, like a thief in the night. Today, in this meal, in you, when you choose not to give someone what they gave to you, but you choose grace, when you choose love, God is breaking in. and God's kingdom is growing and being established today in your life. May it continue to grow. And may when you leave this place, may you be so filled with the flesh and blood of Christ that it becomes a part of you, and that you can tell other people on the beach, I have found the Grand Strand's best soul food. Amen.
Amen.